Hello and welcome to Learn English with Tonguemation. We've already explained the difference between homophones, homographs, and homonyms. You can find it here. In this video, we'll focus on examples of homophones and we will show you 60 pairs of them. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on our new videos. Right, so let's go. Aisle. So the first is a passage in a supermarket. The second is a small island. And the third is a contraction of the words I and will. B. The first is an insect. The second means to exist. Bye. The first is a short for goodbye. The second means to obtain something in exchange for money. The third is a preposition. Been. The first is the past participle of be. The second is a type of edible seed. Beet. The first is a vegetable. The second is a rhythmic accent in music. Bite. The first is the verb that means to cut into food with your teeth. The second is a unit of digital memory. And the third is a recess in a coastline. Break. The first means to interrupt or separate something. The second is a device for stopping moving vehicles. Band. The first is a group of musicians. The second means that someone was prohibited to do something. Bare. The first means naked. The second is an animal. Beach. The first is a sandy shore. The second is a type of a tree. Ceiling. The first is an upper surface of a room. The second is an action of closing something securely. Cell. The first word represents a tiny part of a living organism. The second word means to give something to someone in exchange for money. Check. The first means to examine or monitor. The second is a means of paying someone. Cite. The first is an action of referring to a passage, often as evidence for scholarly work. The second is one of 5 senses. And the third describes an area where a building is constructed. Creak. The first one is a noise made by wood. The second is a stream of a narrow river. Cellar. The first is a room where wines are kept. And the second is a person who sells things. Deer. The first is an animal. And the second means expensive. Die. The first means to stop living. And the second means to change color. Earn. The first means to get money in return for services. And the second is a vase used to keep ashes of a cremated person. Floor. The first is a surface we walk on, and the second means an imperfection. Flower. The first is a part of a plant, and the second is a powder used for baking. For. The first is a preposition. The second is a number. Whole. The first is an empty space within an object. And the second means complete or not divided. Heart. The first is an adult male deer. The second is an organ. Hour. The first is a unit of time. The second indicates that something belongs to the speaker and someone else. I. The first is the first person singular pronoun. The second is a body part. In. The first means inside. The second is a small hotel where you can stay for a night. Jeans. The first means trousers made of denim. And the second means smaller parts of our genetic code. Leak. The first is an escape of a liquid from a pipe. The second is a vegetable. Key. The first is a thing that you open doors with. The second is a platform projecting into water for loading ships. New. The first is the past form of know. The second is something that has just been created or started to exist. Knows. The first is the third person present form of know. The second is a part of your body. Meat. The first is a type of food. The second is an action of getting together. Night. The first is the time between a sunset and sunrise. The second is a soldier from Middle Ages. No. The first is the opposite word of yes. And the second means to have knowledge. Pause. The first means to stop something for a short period. And the second describes animal feet. Pair. The first is a set of two things. The second is a fruit. Peace. The first describes a period in which there is no war. The second is a portion of an object. Paw. The first is a small hole in skin. The second describes a person with no money. And the third means to make a liquid flow from one container to another. Plum. The first is a fruit. The second is an action of connecting pipes together. Pain. The first is a feeling of suffering. The second is a glass used in windows. Plane. The first is a means of transportation. The second describes a thing that is basic and simple. Rain. The first is water falling from clouds. The second is a rule of a monarch. Right. The first means true or correct. The second means to make marks that represent letters, words, or numbers. Sail. The first is a sheet of material attached to a boat. The second is when goods are sold at reduced prices. See. The first is the thing you do using your eyes. The second is an expanse of salty waters. Some. The first is an unspecified amount of something. And the second is a result of addition. Sun. The first is a star within our galaxy. The second is a boy in relation to his parents. Shore. The first is a land along the edge of a sea. And the second describes certainty. Steal. The first is an act of theft. And the second is a strong metal. Steak. The first is a thick piece of meat. And the second is a wooden post. Sweet. The first is a taste similar to sugar. And the second is a hotel room. 2. The first is a number. The second is a preposition. And the third means also. Time. The first is the thing measured by a clock. The second is a herb. Wine. The first is a high-pitched complaining sound. The second is an alcoholic beverage. Wear. The first is an action of being clothed. And the second is a second person past form of be. For example, we wear. And the third is a word we use when we ask questions. Weak. The first is the opposite of strong. And the second is a period of 7 days starting on Monday. Weather. The first is a state of atmosphere. And the second is often used in place of if. Yoke. The first is a wooden bar fastened to a couple of animals. And the second is the yellow part of an egg. Queue. The first is a line of people. The second is the stick used for playing pool. Okay, here it is. 60 homophones. Do you know any other examples of homophones? You can share them in the comments below. Visit our channel to learn more about English vocabulary and grammar. And don't forget to subscribe. Until the next time!